quickly to a couple of issues that were raised in very brief form. One, on the issue of fiber versus wireless, absolutely, they're complementary, but it's important to recognize that fiber is a qualitatively different technology from wireless in that it is effectively infinite in capacity for practical purposes. It's the deep water port of access. So when you deploy fiber, it's not like deploying wireless because there's room for everybody. And that means that strategically you can make different decisions about it. The second point is I just love the term middle mile fortress. Thank you for bringing that up. I'm going to use middle mile fortress often in future conversations. Ways of addressing that, I think one of the best ways of addressing that is increasing transparency around that. And the NCC has flat out the very best web resource from a regulatory perspective on the continent when it comes to spectrum and access issues. Taking that further into the realm of fiber networks, clearly identifying points of presence and getting operators to publish a rate card. West African Economic Community has already agreed that publishing a rate card is something that is strategically useful. Wholesale operators also looking at licenses for operators that only address wholesale. And then, to come to your point about TV whitespace spectrum, let me first just quickly comment on universal service funds. I think the comments in the chat are very to the point, but universal service funds have worked to this extent of incentivizing operators to go where they were already going to go. Where they don't want to go, universal service funds fails, and we need some different approaches to it. And I think opening up universal service funds beyond the incumbent telcos is really important, opening it up to the private sector and to cooperatives and community-owned models. So finally, to your point about TV white space, absolutely, there's hundreds and hundreds of megahertz of unused spectrum, especially in rural areas, and TV white space technology offers the opportunity of alternative rural backhaul, but it's the tip of the iceberg. It's a way station on where we want to get to. There are, LTE spectrum, which for the NCC has been amazing at the forefront of releasing spectrum in general to operators. Much of that spectrum lies fallow in rural areas, right? And so unlocking access to that spectrum in rural areas so that technologies like NURAN and others can be used by entrepreneurs and community-owned networks, cooperatives to access that spectrum. A key move in doing that is to create use it or share it provisions within LTE licensing or within IMT licensing in general. Use it or share it provisions will unlock rural access to entrepreneurs who are bringing innovative business models, just as Bradley was describing, of these new technologies, Open RAN based, solar powered, smaller base stations. So I think TV white space is fantastic, and it's fantastic to see that it's on the verge of being going into formal regulation in Nigeria. But we need to go further. We need to unlock LTE in rural areas.